We often think that the worst things happen in strange places, when we least expect it. But sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones in the house you call family. And Riley Crossman, a smart, obedient and dreamy 15-year-old girl, paid with her own life just because she trusted her mother too much. In the spring of 2019, the small town of Berkeley Springs in West Virginia seemed to wake up with the warm sunshine of the first days of the season. But for the Crossman family, those peaceful days suddenly ended one morning in May. Riley, the friendly, always punctual, never troubled daughter, suddenly stopped coming to school. No notes, no traces, no phone, no bag. Everyone tried to believe that she was just going somewhere. But deep down, they knew something was very wrong. Riley Crossman was born on December 22, 2003, in Martinsburg, a quiet town in northeastern West Virginia. She is the middle child of 4 siblings, loves her younger sister Jade, and is close to her older brothers Ryder and Parker. When her parents divorced, Riley and her siblings lived with their mother, Chantel, in Berkeley Springs, about 40 kilometers from their father's house. Everything was fine, until a man named Andy McCauley entered their lives. Andy, her mother's new boyfriend, was a name that made many people in town wary. He had a long criminal record, was addicted to drugs, and had been involved in theft and violence. But because of love. Because of her desire for a complete family, Chantel still let Andy move in with her mother and her children. No one expected that this decision would open the door to tragedy. On the evening of May 7, 2019, Riley was still a normal girl like every other day. She went to school, had dinner with her family, then went upstairs to FaceTime her boyfriend, Hayden. They argued a little because Hayden was going on a school trip, and Riley was jealous because she was afraid he was getting close to other girls. The conversation ended on a sour note, and Hayden went to bed at 10 p.m. But at exactly 11:01 p.m., a text message appeared on his phone: "Andy is in my room. Don't say anything for him to hear." 12 minutes later, Riley's last text message was sent: "I'm scared, honey." Those were the last words the world heard from the little girl. The next morning, when Riley's mother, Chantel, woke up, she was gone. She assumed her daughter wanted to see Hayden before the trip, so she left early. But when afternoon came and Riley still hadn't returned, worry began to build. Called, no answer. Texted, no reply. Searching everywhere, in vain. Riley never left the house unannounced. That was not her nature. Even the little details made her family uneasy: her phone, her glasses, her charger, her wallet, all in her room. Andy, instead of frantically searching for the stepdaughter of the woman he was living with. Together, he fell asleep on the sofa. When asked, he repeated the vague answer: "I don't know, she must have gone somewhere." But things got even more suspicious when the police discovered that Riley had texted friends that she was uncomfortable with Andy. One friend even said that Riley was afraid to come home because of him. The police began questioning. Andy said he left home at 4 a.m. on May 8 to go to work. But phone records showed he was texting a friend at 2:30 a.m. His testimony was inconsistent, constantly changing. He said he went to buy drugs because he was drugged. But his co-workers said Andy had cocaine on him that day. At the construction site, Andy did not work. Instead, he asked for 3 large garbage bags, saying he needed to clean up another project. When he returned a few hours later, his shoes were untied, his clothes were dirty as if he had changed in a hurry in the dark. Traffic cameras captured Andy driving his blue truck through roads that had nothing to do with work, most notably Tuscarora Pike, where Riley's body was later found. 8 days passed, and the town held its breath. Then the day no one wanted to see came. On May 16, a search party found the body of a teenage girl in a black trash bag, dumped at the bottom of a slope along Tuscarora Pike. Her clothes were torn, her t-shirt was pulled up to her neck, her shorts were unbuttoned and unzipped, and her underwear was pulled up unnaturally high, as if someone had put it on her. Next to it was a white powder, later determined to be wall putty, and screws identical to the ones in Andy McCauley's tool bag. Although the body was too badly decomposed to be visually identifiable, investigators knew for sure that it was Riley. And they also knew for sure who had killed her. When Riley Crossman's body was found in black trash bags at the bottom of a deserted slope on Tuscarora Pike, no one had any illusions about a happy ending. But what was even more shocking was that her killer was the man who was supposed to protect her, Andy McCauley, Riley's mother's boyfriend. Since Riley's disappearance, Andy has been evasive. Sometimes he said he slept all night, sometimes he said he woke up early to go to work. But then a 2:30 a.m. text message to a friend suggested he was awake and out on the streets. When questioned, Andy lied that he needed to buy drugs because he had been drugged, a weak excuse since his co-workers confirmed he had the drugs in hand. The police were not fooled. They turned Andy's testimony upside down, tracing his every move. CCTV footage showed Andy driving the truck away from the construction site around the time Riley went missing. And instead of going from home to work, he drove in the opposite direction, taking several deserted roads, including Tuscarora Pike, which is where Riley's body was found. When confronted with the camera footage, Andy told another lie. He said he was just going to buy drugs, and then he was afraid of being caught. But when investigators asked, "Why did it take 4 hours to buy drugs?" he remained silent. By now, the police had plenty of circumstantial evidence. But they needed one final piece of the puzzle: physical evidence. And then, it was Andy's own carelessness that brought him down. Investigators discovered that Riley's body had a strange white powder on it, a type of construction putty that tests showed was used to make walls. Even more disturbing, the screws found at the scene were identical to the ones found in Andy's tool bag and truck. It couldn't have been a coincidence. Additionally, forensic experts examining Riley's bedroom found her saliva and DNA on a pillow, which suggested that Riley had been gagged, possibly with that same pillow. The arrangement of her clothes, a t-shirt pulled up, shorts unbuttoned, underwear pulled up unnaturally, led investigators to suspect a sexual assault, although the medical examiner could not confirm rape due to the decomposition of the body. The image of Riley's body left a haunting impression. A 15-year-old girl attacked and murdered in her own room. Police began to narrow down the time, from 11 p.m. on May 7 to the early morning of May 8. Riley's text messages to Hayden, "Andy is in my room. I'm scared," were clear evidence that Andy had entered Riley's room while she was awake, unable to let the killer go free. On May 16, just hours after the body was discovered, Andy McCauley was arrested and formally charged with murder. Andy McCauley was more than just Riley's mother's failed boyfriend. He was a drug addict, a maniac, and a violent man. He had been arrested for theft, assault, and drug use multiple times over the course of a decade. But somehow he had entered Chantel's home, living with her children as a stepfather. Riley, a well-behaved, idealistic teenager, was not prepared to face such a man in her own home. Perhaps she thought that if she kept quiet, everything would go away. But Riley had sent out one last distress signal, and it had been ignored for too long. when Andy was arrested, he pretended to cooperate, taking a polygraph test, appearing willing to answer any questions. But the polygraph test was invalid because he was still high on drugs. It was all an act to stall for time. When the police announced that they had found the body of a young woman, Andy feigned emotion. "I hope it's not Riley. I loved her like my own daughter." But those words could not hide the forced smirk and the evasive gaze. In fact, investigators said Andy had lied all along. Each new confession was just another version of the truth. And the deeper they dug, the clearer it became. Andy wasn't just a suspect. He was the killer, deliberate, planned, and completely remorseless. The Riley Crossman case quickly spread through the media and shocked the Berkeley Springs community. People could not believe that a 15-year-old girl had been murdered in her bedroom by her mother's boyfriend, and her body had been discarded like trash. The police, the media, and the community all asked the same question: if it weren't for that text message sent at 11 p.m., would we ever have known the truth? But it was thanks to Riley's instinct, her lucidity in the moment of greatest fear, that the truth finally came out. Andy thought he had killed, buried, and gotten away with it. But he had forgotten one thing: no matter how good a murderer is, he can't erase the blood from the truth. More than 2 years after Riley Crossman was murdered, the case was finally brought to trial. On September 27, 2021, in a packed courtroom in Morgan County, West Virginia, Andrew "Andy" McCauley, the man who once lived under the same roof as the victim, faced justice. The atmosphere in the courtroom was suffocating. Riley's family, friends, reporters, police, and local residents were all present. Everyone knew that the prosecutors had a case as solid as iron: hundreds of pieces of evidence, testimony, video footage, physical evidence from the crime scene to the construction site. But what was shocking was that Andy still did not plead guilty. Instead, he pleaded silent and emotionless. He sat in the dock, showing no remorse, no apology, and no admission of guilt. Prosecutor Dan James opened by replaying the entire crime, from the moment Riley sent the distress message, to the moment her decomposed body was found. But the highlight of the trial was not just the evidence, but also the heartbreaking detail: Riley had been killed in her own bedroom, where she should have been safest. They described Riley's clothes as torn and pulled up unnaturally. Her t-shirt was bunched around her neck, her shorts were unbuttoned, her underwear was pulled up so high that her private parts were exposed. Although it was impossible to determine whether she had been sexually assaulted because of the decomposition of her body, the image was enough to make everyone in the courtroom silent with anger and horror. The medical examiner concluded that Riley died of homicide of unspecified means, that is, she was killed, but could not determine the exact cause because the body was so decomposed. However, they did not rule out strangulation or suffocation with a pillow, exactly what the police suspected. The officer at the scene testified about the condition of Riley's body. He described how her clothes had been put back on carelessly, not as if she had put them on herself. The most heartbreaking detail is that Riley's shoes still have white plaster on them, a material only found at Andy's workplace. The screws around the body also matched the ones found in Andy's tool bag and truck. The key witness was Andy's former boss, Howard Ruark. He took the stand and said that on the morning of May 8, Andy left the construction site for 4 or 5 hours and asked for industrial trash bags. When he returned, he was wearing wrinkled clothes, his shoes were untied, and he had clearly changed clothes in a hurry. And he did not explain where he was going or what he was doing. The police also released surveillance video, showing Andy driving along the route where Riley's body was found. Even though he had said he had not gone there, the pieces of the puzzle were put together, and there was no doubt, Andy McCauley was Riley's killer. In the decision on whether to attach mercy to the sentence, Riley's father, Lance Crossman, took the stand. His voice was shaky but clear. Riley will always be 15. She only has 15 years of life. So how can the person who killed her be considered for parole after 15 years? Is that mercy? Tell me. Where was the mercy when he walked into my daughter's room in the middle of the night? Where was the mercy when he left my daughter's body like trash on the side of the road? No one in the courtroom could keep calm. Some wiped away tears. Some clenched their fists, angry. In the end, it took the jury less than 20 minutes to reach its verdict: first-degree murder, premeditated. Child abuse and murder by a guardian, concealment of a body. They were 100% unanimous in not attaching mercy to the sentence, meaning Andy would never be considered for parole. Never have a chance to redeem himself. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars, with no sunlight, no escape. On November 4, 2021, the judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole. Andy McCauley is currently serving his sentence at the Mount Olive Correctional Complex in West Virginia. He didn't say a word. He didn't apologize. He didn't shed a tear. Riley Crossman wasn't the first victim of domestic violence, but she became a cautionary tale. The case forced the nation to reconsider the truth. Sometimes the danger doesn't come from strangers on the street, but from people in the homes we thought were safe. In the wake of Riley's death, many communities have pushed for initiatives to monitor live-in partners, increase vigilance in schools, and especially encourage children to speak up if they feel unsafe. Riley is no more. But her story will continue to resonate, as a reminder that sometimes, a text message whispered in the middle of the night can be the last cry for help. And the most important clue to the truth. Thank you for following this haunting investigation. Please share Riley's story so we never have to repeat a similar tragedy. I'm going to kill you. The voice rang out in broad daylight, in the parking lot of a quiet apartment complex in Beaufort, Georgia. No one knew that minutes later, a young woman, a beautiful, 30-year-old single mother, once called the life of the party by her friends, would be lying on the pavement, her internal organs damaged, her ribs shattered, and finally, no longer breathing. Ashley Bocanegra, a girl who had dreamed of a bright future for her 7-year-old son, left her apartment that day with a simple goal: to talk to her ex, Daniel Gonzalez, the father of her child. But she didn't expect that the person waiting for her wasn't Daniel, but death. Why would a grown woman, the mother of a child, die in broad daylight at the hands of a 17-year-old girl? What happened between three people who seemed to have left the past behind, to start over in a new land? And most importantly, was justice really served, or was this another case forgotten, in the shadow of misunderstanding, lies, and jealousy? Let me retrace Ashley's steps: every text message, every call, every step she took into the trap she couldn't escape. To understand why that day, that woman died at the hands of her ex-lover's fiancé, with the help of the sister of the man they fought over, an unfair fight, recorded on a phone, laughed at on social media, and ended with a 20-year prison sentence. But was it enough? Ashley Bocanegra was born and raised in New York. With her bright smile and cheerful personality, she was always the center of every party. A girl who made others pay attention as soon as she walked into the room. Years ago, she had a passionate relationship with Daniel Gonzalez, a handsome, charismatic, and troubled Latino. They fell in love, broke up, and got back together. The result was a lovely son and a fateful bond. A few years later, the two moved by chance, or on purpose, to Beaufort, Georgia, a small town less than an hour's drive from Atlanta. They had their own lives. Daniel was engaged to Antonetta Stevens, Ashley had her own fiancé. But fate was playing tricks on them. They both worked the night shift, and Ashley was Daniel's boss. Amid the floor tiles and shift receipts at Floor Decor, the old flame flared up again. If it had just been a secret affair, it might not have been so bloody. But instead of keeping it a secret, Daniel told his younger sister, 17-year-old Janine Gonzalez, everything. Janine is not the type to keep secrets. She immediately told Antonetta, her brother's fiancée, whom Janine considered her sister. At that time, Antonetta was crazy. They had left the past together, moved to Georgia to start over. She thought she would have a family, children, happiness. But it all turned out to be a betrayal. And the betrayer was the woman who had slept with her husband, had been her boss, and now was still a mortal threat: jealousy, hurt, and humiliation. Those three things combined made Antonetta plan a talk, but this was not a conversation, it was an ambush. August 11, 2022. Clear sky. Hot sun. Ashley went to the Preston Hills at Mill Creek apartment complex, where Daniel lived with his fiancée. She thought she would see Daniel. But as soon as she entered the parking lot, two women rushed out to block her way. No one intervened. No one spoke, only screams and a phone recording everything. Antonetta shouted at Ashley, "I will kill you." Then grabbed her hair and threw her to the concrete. Ashley, the smaller, weaker, struggled. But it was hopeless. Janine, 17, the sister who filmed her, at first just stood there watching. But then, as if provoked by the violence, she rushed in and kicked Ashley in the head 3 times. The video, which later became the main evidence, clearly recorded Janine laughing. She can still talk after being beaten? Ashley did not die immediately. She crawled back to the apartment, demanding her phone back. The blood did not flow too much. No one thought she would die. Even when the police arrived, Ashley still said, "I don't know who Antonetta is, I'm not cheating." But hours later, her face was swollen, her throat was constricted, and her internal organs were severely damaged. She died before surgery. Cause of death: ruptured adrenal gland. Indirect cause: jealousy. Method of murder: hands, feet, cruelty, and a videophone. When the police told her Ashley was dead, Janine laughed. She didn't believe it. Or she did, but she didn't care. What? Murder? God, life is crazy, she said, and laughed softly. She was only 17, but she was officially charged with murder. Same with her sister-in-law, Antonetta. Beaufort, Georgia, a small town, so quiet that many people don't bother locking their doors at night, where kids ride bikes in the yard, where mothers chat on their balconies, where it seems like everyone knows each other, or at least thinks they know the people living next door. The Preston Hills at Mill Creek apartment complex, where the murder took place, is not a slum, not a crime hot spot. It's like any other suburban apartment complex: white picket fences, shady trees, and the sound of children's laughter every afternoon. But on the afternoon of August 11, 2022, that peace was shattered. A summer afternoon, the sun was shining brightly. No one heard the gunshots, no one saw the blood, only a dry sound: crack. The sound of a head hitting the concrete, and another sound, quieter, but far more terrifying. The sound of a phone recording. Antonetta Stevens, 27, Daniel Gonzalez's fiancée, had a plan. She didn't wait for Ashley inside. She and Janine, her teenage sister-in-law, went out to the parking lot to pick up the girl. No one in the neighborhood stopped her. No one called the police when they heard the initial screams. Some saw it, but they thought, it must be a jealous fight. But the truth was, this wasn't a fight. This was an execution. Ashley arrived at the apartment complex without a weapon. No weapon, no companion, no warning. She thought she'd see Daniel. But he wasn't the one who opened the door. She was dragged out into the parking lot. The fight started with a grab of her hair. Antonetta was bigger, stronger. She tackled Ashley to the ground, smashed her head into the pavement, and screamed, "I'm going to kill you." Daniel's sister, Janine, stood by filming. But soon she couldn't take it anymore. She lunged. Kicked Ashley in the head. Multiple times. As Ashley begged to get up, Antonetta snatched her phone and handed it to Janine. They intended to use it to call Ashley's fiancé to reveal the truth, that she was having an affair with Daniel, but they didn't, they just laughed. Then the beating continued. An office worker at the apartment complex heard the screaming. Finally, they called 911. When the police arrived, Ashley was still alive. She staggered to her feet, demanded her phone back, and staggered back to her apartment. Daniel, awakened by the fighting, came out too late. He saw Ashley's face red and swollen, but still talking. Little did he know, she was broken inside. Daniel didn't stop the attack. The police didn't immediately arrest anyone. Ashley, in a call from the hospital, said she didn't know anyone named Antonetta. She denied having an affair. Everything seemed like it would end like a love quarrel. But a few hours later, Ashley stopped breathing. When the police returned to Daniel's apartment that evening, no one cried, not a tear, not a trace of remorse. When the investigator announced that Ashley was dead, Antonetta just sighed softly, then said, "I'm sorry, but she came to my house." She repeated it like a moral shield. "I didn't invite her. I didn't hit her. She came to Daniel, not me." But the truth was, Antonetta and Janine had used Daniel's phone while he was sleeping to text Ashley to lure her to the house. What do we call that? Murder? Ambush? Jealousy. When she was brought to the police station, Antonetta claimed to be depressed. She said she had bipolar disorder. She was a mother. She was trying to rebuild her life. But the cameras were still rolling. Janine's phone still had the video of Ashley being beaten, and the confession was recorded. Janine was different. She laughed throughout the interrogation. She was 17, but she acted like a kid who had just been arrested for stealing candy. She laughed when she was told she had broad shoulders. She laughed when she heard she was charged with robbery, and when she heard she was charged with murder. Huh? Murder? Who? Me? That's terrible. Then she laughed again. Neighbors didn't believe it. Friends didn't believe it. Everyone said, "Ashley? She's dead? That's impossible. She was always upbeat and cheerful. How could she die from a fight?" The town of Beaufort had been peaceful, but after that day, people started locking their doors. Children stopped playing in the yard, and people started whispering. They planned it all along. She just wanted her phone back. But she never got a chance to make another call. Ashley Bocanegra, 30 years old, single mother. Exemplary employee. Respected manager by her colleagues, but above all, she is a mother who loves her children unconditionally. Related people describe Ashley as a little sun. Wherever she goes, the space brightens. She wanted to become a veterinarian because she loved her little cat named Princess since childhood. When that dream didn't come true, she switched to retail. Not because she liked it, but because she wanted to give her 7-year-old son a full life. The love between Ashley and Daniel was not new. They were passionately in love, had a child together, then broke up because of irreconcilable conflicts, but fate or some blind bond makes them work together again, sleep together again. Even though Daniel is engaged. She wasn't perfect. But she never hurt anyone. Why did she die that way? A close friend of Ashley said through tears, Daniel Gonzalez, a man living between two women, he didn't choose, he didn't decide, he didn't tell the truth, it was that ambiguity that killed Ashley. Who did Daniel love? No one knew, but when he told his sister Janine about his relationship with Ashley, who was his boss, Daniel set off a bomb. Janine didn't keep it a secret. She told Antonetta, who had treated her like a sister. From that moment on, everything changed. It was no longer a secret relationship. It was revenge. Antonetta didn't say anything to Ashley. No threatening text messages. No warnings. She kept quiet. She planned and waited for the right moment. The scary thing is not the action, but the preparation time. She knew she was going to beat Ashley, and she brought along her cameraman, Janine. This wasn't a moment of impulse. This was a social execution. When the police investigated, they found small blood stains left on the concrete. Security cameras recorded the three women walking to the parking lot, but there was no footage of the assault, no screams for help. No one called the police first. Another strange thing, Ashley was conscious after the beating. She was able to walk. She was able to talk. She even told the police, "I don't know those two people." But the truth was, her head was swollen, her chest was fractured, she had internal injuries so severe that doctors couldn't operate on her. Another chilling detail, Antonetta didn't deny it. She gave detailed accounts of the beating, but kept repeating the same phrase, "She came to my house." She wanted to blame the victim. The first thing the police noticed was Daniel's phone. It hadn't been in his possession all morning. Who used it? Antonetta and Janine. They used Daniel's own number to text Ashley, pretending that Daniel was calling her to meet. Ashley thought she was talking to her son's father, but the person waiting was the enemy. The call from the hospital said, Ashley died of a ruptured right adrenal gland caused by a very strong impact. The autopsy report, homicide, murder. The camera didn't show the beating clearly, but Janine had filmed the video with her own phone. In the video, when Antonetta asked, "Do you want to join?" Janine replied, "Of course." Then she kicked Ashley in the head 3 times. At the police station, when she heard that Ashley was dead, Daniel collapsed. He screamed, then broke down. "Please. Don't say that. Don't say she died. Please." An act? Or was it really that he didn't expect things to go this far? Antonetta was the opposite. She was quiet, unresponsive. She said only one thing when she heard Ashley's death: "I didn't try to kill her. I just wanted to teach her a lesson." Janine, 17, laughed again. Laughed when she was charged with robbery. Laughed when she heard the 2 words, murder. It was just hair. I just pulled her hair. And now it's like this. Have you ever thought, could this happen in your apartment complex? Could someone plan to beat someone to death just because of a few ambiguous text messages? Could a teenage girl laugh as she kills someone just because she slept with my brother? This was not an accident. It was a tragedy of jealousy, lies, and uncontrolled anger. The case quickly became a media sensation in Georgia. A woman was beaten to death in broad daylight by her ex-lover's fiancé with the help of his sister. The trial was tense and emotional. The most important piece of evidence, Janine Gonzalez's phone. She had recorded the beating. And in it, Antonetta turned to Janine and asked, "Do you want a piece of this?" And Janine, 17, smiled, nodded, and kicked the victim in the head. The defense attorney tried to get Janine to reduce the charge. She was just a bystander. If she was guilty, it was involuntary manslaughter, not murder. But the prosecutor countered, a bystander did not kick the victim in the head 3 times. The bystander did not laugh after hearing the news of the victim's death. The bystander did not take the phone and attempt to text the deceased's fiancée. The fatal blow, according to the medical examiner's report, was a blow that ruptured the right adrenal gland, leading to uncontrolled internal bleeding. The verdict: Antonetta Stevens, guilty of first-degree murder, robbery, and aggravated assault. Janine Gonzalez, although only 17, she was tried as an adult and found guilty of murder and robbery. Both were sentenced 20 years in prison without parole. Ashley Bocanegra is gone. Her son, who was only 7, lost his mother. Her fiancé, who had planned to marry Ashley, had to pick her up from the hospital, instead of picking her up at the wedding. Daniel, the man in the middle of the incident, was not charged, but lives with guilt. I never thought it would be like this. I never wanted Ashley to die. I lost everything. Ashley's family held a funeral in her hometown of New York. The costs were largely covered by a GoFundMe, with thousands of people donating. A cousin of Ashley's said, "We thought she was safe." Who would have thought? Death would come right to the doorstep of the person she trusted. No one thought a fight would kill a young mother. No one believed a 17-year-old girl could calmly kick another person to death, and then laugh in an interrogation room. But it's true. Society needs to recognize jealousy, if left unchecked, can become murderous. Social media, cameras, text messages, all can be used as evidence against you. No one has the right to take another person's life, no matter how much damage it causes, no matter how much you think you're the victim. If someone had listened to Ashley, if someone had stopped her that day, if someone had told her, "Don't go to that apartment, something's wrong," would she have survived? It was sunny when Ashley walked into the apartment. She didn't know she was walking into a trap. She just wanted to see her son's father, just wanted to get her phone back. But then, a punch, a kick, a drag. She would never see her son again. If that were your son, are you sure you could have saved him in time? If you saw your daughter meeting her married ex, would you have said, "Don't go"? And if you were ever so jealous that you wanted to hit someone, would you have stopped and asked, "Is the price too great"? "9 years old, gone in broad daylight. And your mother is the one calling out to the whole country, 'Shannon, if you can hear me, please come home. We miss you so much.'" A mother stands before the television camera, her face puffy, tears streaming down her face, her voice shaking with each call. Shannon Matthews, just 9 years old, has been missing for a week. No trace. No screams. No witnesses. The whole country is suffocating. And then, a few weeks later, she is found. Alive. Close to home. Under the bed. And the worst part is not where she was kept. It's that the person who kept her locked up is part of the family, and the person crying before the camera is the one who made it all happen. Ellie was just a few steps away from home, but she never made it. No, Ellie is not Shannon. But if the first name makes you shudder, imagine this: a child leaves school, walks down a familiar path, and then disappears, no sound. No witnesses, even her mother, who should have been the first to notice something was wrong, takes 3.5 hours to call the police. Why does a 9-year-old girl vanish in broad daylight? Why did no one see anything, no one hear anything, not even her closest loved ones? This is more than a disappearance. This is a play. A cruel play, starring a mother. But wait, before you get angry, before you judge, follow me, retrace Shannon's last steps. From the school gate, to the cold path she walked, to the half-closed door, and under the dark bed, where she was hidden like an old toy. On February 19, 2008, at 3:10 p.m., Shannon Matthews left Westmore Primary School on Dewsbury Moor, Yorkshire. It was cold. The wind was bitter. But the route she took was the same. It took only 10 minutes to get home. Home, but she never came home. Remember the last time your child was late coming home from school? You called. You ran. You searched every nook and cranny. You didn't wait 3.5 hours to pick up the phone and call the police, and yet Karen Matthews, Shannon's mother, did just that. At 6:50 p.m. that night, Karen called 999 and reported her daughter missing. No rush. No panic, just a routine call, and then the whole country was shocked. In the first 24 hours, more than 200 police officers were mobilized. 48 hours later, 300, police, dogs, helicopters, even the local army. People poured into the streets, combing every bush, knocking on every door, because Shannon was no stranger. She was the little princess of Dewsbury Moor, a shy, quiet girl, but always polite and well-behaved. And Karen Matthews, she was a single mother, with 7 children by 5 different men. Life was poor, crowded. But no one expected. Behind that small door was a terrible plan. Karen appeared on TV. She cried. She begged, "I love you, Shannon. We're all waiting for you to come home." Viewers were stunned. Newspapers called her the most miserable mother in Britain. A support fund was set up to £50,000. The whole town contributed money, contributed effort. Some were so poor that they had to sell their house, just to hope Shannon would come back. But then, when a policeman walked into Karen's house, he saw Karen and her boyfriend laughing, playing games, while the whole country was crazy about their child. Something was wrong, very wrong. Why couldn't a mother who had lost her child shed a tear when there was no camera? Why did the police find scrawled on the wall in Shannon's room, "I want to live with my dad"? Then a relative revealed a name, Michael Donovan, a man who lived less than a mile away, and Karen's boyfriend's cousin, and so the story took a turn. It was no longer a typical missing person case. It was an elaborate scam, orchestrated by one of Britain's worst mothers. Why her own child? Why would she lock a baby under her bed for 24 days, tie her up, drug her, write her cruel rules for living, for £50,000? If it were you, would you believe a mother would do that? The answer will make you shudder. Dewsbury Moor, a name that sounds far-fetched to people outside of England, a small settlement in West Yorkshire, surrounded by low hills, scattered woods, and rows of red brick houses typical of the north. Here, people often leave their doors unlocked during the day. Children play in the streets, fly kites, play football, skip rope. The neighbors call each other by their first names. Everyone knows how many children each family has, which school they go to, and which one gets scolded by their mother for not washing the dishes. It is there that Shannon Matthews grew up, and it is there that, on a cold February afternoon, the pieces torn apart. February 19, 2008, 3:10 p.m. when school ends. Shannon leaves Westmore Primary School after her swimming lesson with her class. Her friends return in small groups, but Shannon, as usual, goes alone. No one sees her return home. No one saw me turn into the alley. No one heard the scream. No one heard the hurried footsteps. Only one thing remained. The backpack dropped on the side of the road. Silence. As if no one had ever passed by. Karen Matthews, 32, is a mother of 3 living on welfare. Her home is at the end of Moorside Street, where every Monday morning Karen can be seen standing talking to neighbors, dragging 4 or 5 children by the hand to the door. Karen came home just before 5 p.m. that afternoon. Her boyfriend, Craig Meehan, asked, "Where's Shannon?" Karen turned pale. She searched the house, then ran to a neighbor's house to ask. No one had seen Shannon, but she didn't call the police. It wasn't until 6:50 p.m., more than 3.5 hours after Shannon had gone missing, that Karen picked up the phone and dialed 999, 3.5 hours. No screams. No blood. No panic. Just a chilling silence. Just hours after Karen's call, Dewsbury police issued an emergency alert. The 9-year-old disappeared on her way home. No one had seen her. They immediately began a large-scale search operation. 200 police were mobilized that night, sniffer dogs. Helicopters with infrared cameras, rescuers dived into nearby ponds. Volunteers, hundreds of them, went to every corner, even searching in public bins. The child goes missing. The whole town becomes a military operation. The British media immediately followed every detail: the Daily Mail, The Sun, BBC News, ITV. Reported live from Dewsbury, cameras captured every panicked face of the people. Every mother clutched her child's hand as she walked to school. Karen Matthews's image appeared all over television. "Please, whoever has Shannon, give her back to me. I just want to hold her one more time." But something was wrong, very wrong. While everyone was running around looking for Shannon, Karen was quite calm. She chatted with the press, gave interviews, and went shopping. Cameras captured Karen laughing in the supermarket, pushing a cart full of hard liquor with Craig. "If it were you, and your child was missing, would you choose alcohol or tears?" The police began to be suspicious. The coldness, the calmness, and most of all, Karen had 2 family liaison officers. Normally, one would suffice. Why did a mother wait 3 hours to report her child missing? Why was she so strangely calm? Why did she cry on camera and laugh when the cameras were off? And why, among hundreds of people searching, were there family members who did not join in? The police, the press, even the public began to whisper, "Is this really a kidnapping? Or just an act?" Shannon Matthews, 9, went missing on February 19, 2008. After school, her mother, Karen Matthews, reported her missing more than 3 hours later. A nationwide search was launched, with police and the community involved. A support fund was set up to £50,000. The media called this the disappearance that shocked Britain, compared to Maddie McCann. But behind the tears, behind the desperate appeal, are layers of darkness gradually revealed. Shannon Matthews was born on September 9, 1998, a shy, quiet girl, but very fond of animals. Shannon once told her best friend, "When I grow up I want to be a vet. To cure Mio the cat." She loves purple, hates radishes, and often collects cartoon pencils. A 9-year-old child like any other child, innocent, soft, and fragile. But what is special about Shannon is that she always avoids the eyes of adults. The teacher once said that every time someone accidentally raised their voice, Shannon would startle, hold her head, and tremble, a child afraid of noise. Afraid of adults. Afraid of touch. Why? Craig Meehan, Mom's boyfriend, the first person the police suspected. When Shannon went missing, Craig was playing Xbox. He didn't search, didn't panic, just Saturday pressing buttons. A strange stepfather, showing no emotion. And then, when asked about the disappearance, Craig said, "I didn't do anything. I swear." Strangely, no one asked him if he did anything, but he said it himself. Why rush to deny it, if he was innocent? From a mother crying in front of the camera, Karen gradually revealed a different image, unusually calm, started using donations to buy alcohol, and strangest of all, told everyone the same thing over and over again, that Shannon was still alive, she was just around here. Why was Karen so sure? A mother's intuition, or a line from a script? This guy never appeared in any news reports. No one knew about him, until one of Karen's relatives mentioned him at dinner. Michael is Craig's cousin, living less than a kilometer from Karen's house. Strangely, when Shannon went missing, Michael did not participate in the search. did not call to inquire, and even avoided the family. When the police checked Michael's records, the shocking truth emerged: he had kidnapped his own daughter from school. He was not allowed to raise his child due to violent behavior and mental instability. He was living on welfare and desperately needed the money. A reclusive man with a dark past, who had no contact with anyone, was the man Karen suddenly forgot to mention. Is it by accident? Or was he deliberately hidden when the police searched Karen's house? They found a scrawled note in Shannon's room: "I want to live with my dad." Beside the bed was a pair of small shoes, with prints pointing out, but no prints pointing back. The curtains in the room were torn from the inside. A piece of evidence was found in a trash can near the school, a hair clip identical to Shannon's, but there was no blood. It was all staged, enough to be misleading, but lacking in logic. A clumsy stage. A classmate of Shannon's, Megan, recalled, Shannon was bullied at school. One time she cried and hid in a hole behind a bush by the railway tracks. The police followed Megan there, searching every bush, but found nothing: no trace, no hair, no clue. But then, an anonymous phone call came to the police station: check Michael Donovan's apartment. No name, no number, just one sentence, cold and decisive. The police broke down the apartment door. At first, nothing, until an officer ducked under the bed and saw a tiny, pale face peering out of the darkness. Shannon was found after 24 days missing. Tied with a rope around his waist, given sedatives every day, living under a bed in a filthy locked flat. Beside him was a note with the following rules: do not go near the window. Do not make any noise. Do not eat anything without permission. Michael Donovan was arrested on the spot, but what shocked the police the most was his first statement: I did not kidnap her. Her mother told me to keep her. Then wait for the reward money. The police confirmed Karen Matthews and Michael Donovan planned to kidnap Shannon, waited for several weeks, then stumbled upon Shannon to collect the £50,000 reward, the baby, the instrument of the scam. A mother, holding her own child hostage, to cash in on the nation's sympathy. On April 11, 2008, Karen Matthews and Michael Donovan appeared in court. The atmosphere in the courtroom was thick with anger, not just from the press but also from those who had been knocking on doors looking for Shannon. A mother, an uncle, a kidnapping plot, and a 9-year-old drugged and tied under a bed, all for £50,000, money largely from poor, working-class people in their own neighborhood. Karen's defense argued she was a victim of a dangerous man. She knew nothing. But the prosecutor, Julian Goose QC, hit back: she lied all along. She lied all the time. And the biggest lie of all was that she was a mother. The evidence was unassailable: a recording of Karen and Michael discussing waiting for the right moment to bring her out into the world. The drugs temazepam and Travalis, which caused drowsiness and dizziness, were found in Shannon's blood, not just once, but on several consecutive days. CCTV footage captured Karen laughing after crying on live television. Karen's phone text message talked about dividing the reward if it all worked out. Karen Matthews and Michael Donovan were sentenced to 8 years in prison for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and perverting justice, but, just 4 years later, both were released for good behavior. 8 years for a child locked under a bed, 4 years for a mother who poisoned the nation's trust, and a lifetime for a little girl named Shannon Matthews. Shannon, the little princess her mother had called her, was never the same again. She was sent to live with a foster family. Her identity strictly protected, her name was changed, her school was changed, and she was not even allowed to see her siblings, a rift that could not be mended, not just in her body, but in her soul. Shannon's psychiatric records state she is afraid of the dark. She does not dare sleep alone. She often cries when she hears footsteps under her bed. Shannon's biological father, Leon Rose, only appeared in one interview. I don't know what to say except I'm sorry. I wasn't there when she needed me most. He then disappeared from the media, carrying a lifelong regret. Shannon's school set up a small garden behind the school, with a small sign that read, "For children who have no one to stand by them." Not Shannon's name. But everyone knows who it is for, and Karen Matthews, after her release from prison, Karen was given a new identity by the government, moved to the south of England, and lived in obscurity. She once said, "I have changed. I am a new person. I have become a Christian." But just a few months later, she was caught complaining in the tabloids that welfare is not enough to live on. She wanted more. This time it wasn't her daughter, it was pity. Shannon had said she wanted to live with her father. No one listened. Her teacher had reported her as being traumatized. No one did anything. Her neighbors had called social services, but the case was shelved. If someone, just one person, had listened to her sooner, would she have lived in the dark, under a bed, like an abandoned pet? Never think it can't happen in my neighborhood. Never think parents are always good. And don't wait until a child goes missing to look for the early signs. We started this story with a little girl leaving school, but never coming home. We end with a little girl being found, but never being herself again. So the ultimate question is, if it were your child, would you have time to save it, or would you only know when it was under the bed, and the world thought it was dead?